everyone. Welcome to Prove It with Batya. I'm Batya Ungar-Sargon. Here at News Nation, we believe very firmly that more unites us than divides us as Americans, which is why it is so important to hear from people you don't agree with. That's the point of this show. We are today going to debate a very important topic. Can the Democrats outrun the DSA? The DSA, of course, are the Democratic Socialists of America. They've been running a whole bunch of far-left candidates with all kinds of views. These are people who, as former members reliably inform us, really don't believe in America. They have a real belief that political violence is okay. They believe in abolishing ICE. Their views in general are very divorced from the views of the kinds of working class Americans that they pretend to be supporting, representing. And we're seeing this in the polling, you guys. So, for example, in Maine, in New York, in Denver, and now in Michigan, we're seeing the socialist candidates winning with the white progressive elites, with the higher income voters, and then losing and failing to get traction with working class voters, Black voters, and Hispanic voters, the base of the Democratic Party, or what was once the base. So the Democrats have a real problem here. The new headlines just from today are coming out of Michigan. Now, in Michigan, you have Haley Stevens, who is a moderate Democrat, running against Abdul El-Sayed, who is DSA aligned. He will say he's not a member of the Democratic Socialists, but he has the same campaign managers, the same support, the same teams behind him as have been running all the other socialists. Now, he had a bunch of bad headlines this week. Here's the first. Abdul El-Sayed is running on Medicare for All. Happens to be something I support. I think that the healthcare situation in America is humiliatingly embarrassing for a first world country. I know that a lot of you guys write to me and tell me you cannot afford good healthcare. It's a problem. Okay, Abdul El-Sayed has a solution, Medicare for All. But look at this. His wife, who's a psychiatrist, turns out does not accept Medicare or any insurance at all. So this is a candidate who's out there saying, I am running on Medicare for All, and his own wife will only see rich patients who can pay $500, $1,000 out of pocket to see her. She does not accept any insurance at all. It's just the latest example of socialism for the private insurance for me, or private cash for me. The hypocrisy just knows no bounds. Beyond this, we found out today, Abdul El-Sayed finally released his tax returns. He didn't want to do it for a long time. Why, you may ask? Well, because it turns out his estimated net worth is somewhere between $600,000 and $1.7 million. Turns out you get very wealthy when your wife will not take any insurance. They also own property overseas. So these are the people who are the socialists. Same thing as we talked about at great length here with Graham Plattner, a guy who cast himself as somehow working class, comes from a well-to-do family. His grandfather was a famous architect. His father gave him $200,000 to buy his home. Same thing with Morris Katz and Daniel Morath, the guys who gave us Graham Plattner. Same thing with the Democratic Socialists who won in New York. They won, in some cases, rich areas by 30 points and lost working class areas by 30 points as well. Claire Valdez. This is socialism by and for the rich. And working class people know it, which is why, let's put up this latest poll in Michigan. Abdul El-Sayed, running against Haley Stevens, is losing the working class by 22 points. Haley Stevens, the moderate, who he has, portrayed as somehow in the pocket of the billionaires, who, by the way, only makes $160,000 a year, unlike Abdul El-Sayed. Haley Stevens is up 22 points with working class voters who don't have a college degree. Guys, I couldn't believe this when I saw it, although of course I could believe it. She's up 46 points over him with Black voters. 67% of Black Michiganders voting in the Democratic primary say they're voting for Haley Stevens. Abdul El-Sayed is getting 21% of Black voters. This is called a problem. Houston, we have a problem. The DSA, the socialists, are pretending to run on economic populism for the little guy, for the working class, when actually what they're doing is building a tiny little white, progressive, rich elite within the Democratic Party and forcing out candidates chosen by working class Democrats, Black Democrats, and Hispanic Democrats. This, in my view, 5-alarm fire if you are a Democrat. But let's find out how actual Democrats are thinking and feeling about this. Let's throw up our poll. Can the Democrats outrun the socialists, the DSA? And let's bring in my guest, Mally Smith, a son of the South. I'm so honored to have you. He's a Democratic strategist, a wonderful person. And I'm curious, Mally, what do you think? Can the Democrats outrun the DSA?
Well, I think so. And let me caveat, though, I'm not going to deny the fact that there's obviously been some momentum. You had the 3 races in New York. You had the recent races in Colorado. You've had the fact that Mamdani is an incredibly talented communicator. If you disagree with his politics, it's hard to argue with the fact that he is good at communicating what he is doing. But where I would push back is the polling you just brought up. There are segments of the Democratic Party that get really excited about this democratic socialist agenda, but the more diverse states are not as much of a fan, simply because African-American voters, working class voters are not on board with all of this. Mm-hmm. And you saw this actually play out almost a decade earlier. Bernie Sanders had similar problems against Hillary. Hillary won Black voters. Hillary won voters. I don't know as much about the income front, but she won less educated voters, just voters who hadn't gone to college. I'm sure they're smart. Mm-hmm. They just don't have the degrees. Mm-hmm. So you've seen this play out. And I would also push back, though, in that I do think there is an element of the right wanting to take every far left person and try to say they represent Democrats everywhere. Because when Governor Cooper in my home state won the primary for Senate, he received almost 1 million votes. Sherrod Brown, certainly a progressive, but not a socialist, won his primary for Senate in Ohio. Patola, small state, but still won a statewide race to be the nominee. There weren't, I'll throw them out. Newsmax didn't have stories that said, moderates on the rise. Right. They then focused when we had these congressional primaries. So I won't deny the fact that there is this energy there, but I do think it's a much more complicated picture.
I desperately want you to be right. Like, I want the answer of, can the Democrats outrun the DSA, to be yes, of course they can. Like, most of their voters don't want anything to do with this crap. I just worry. And the reason that I worry is this. It seems to me very clear that the progressive wing has no answer to the socialist wing. So progressives like Mallory McMorrow, for example, who dropped out of the Senate primary, who was running between Abdul El-Sayed and Haley Stevens, she just had no answers for, well, why not go with the socialists, right? I think, I forgot who put it this way, but said, like, why would you go with Diet Coke when you can get like Coke? You know what I mean? Like, the progressives have no answer as to why you should be a progressive but not a socialist. And I worry that someone like a Hakeem Jeffries or a Gretchen Whitmer or an Andy Bashir would struggle to give an affirmative view of what it means to be a moderate Democrat today. Like, what is the policy? What is the immigration policy? What is the economic policy? What is the social policy? It seems like there's a lot of insecurity, and you don't see people getting excited to say, no, I'm a moderate. Like, that's what I am. Put me in the middle. That almost is like a slur, even though the vast majority of Americans call themselves moderates.
Yeah. And I think, though, there's an element to that's just a problem in our politics of, like, we know the folks more on the extreme right, on the extreme left, they excite the bases, and they also excite the news. It's more interesting to have someone on a news channel that's going to say the other side's completely terrible than to have someone who says, maybe they have a point here, and maybe here's some areas we can find common ground. I would say this. I think the thing Democrats need to do, especially those who are progressive left, but wouldn't say they're, democratic socialists and don't agree with some of the really out there ideas that the democratic socialists have, is they have to tap in to both the economic anxiety that Americans have and the anxiety that the politics is just not fair and everything is stacked against them. And they need to find the way to be a reformer. And one of the smartest things that President Trump did politically, I disagree with him on most things. One of the smartest things he did politically was he was able to take the outsider mantle, and Democrats, especially because I think the white base is very college educated, they became the party of institutions. Here's the process. Here's the evidence. This is what you need to do to get to this outcome. And since we became the defenders of institutions, we had trouble seeing where they let people down, being seen as reformers. And that isn't an easy answer, because you're going to have to find something that both taps into this anxiety, but doesn't fully lead you down the democratic socialist path. And I think the real key too is, especially when it comes to economics, is how do you find an answer that isn't nationalize everything?
Right.
And I'm with you. I'm for Medicare for all. I'm more of the Secretary Pete plan of Medicare for all who want it.
Yeah.
But if Democrats can find that answer, I think they'll do well. Some people who I think on the Democratic side who've been able to kind of meld this desire for reform, this just anger at the system, and progressive politics that you wouldn't say are socialist, is John Ossoff. I think he's done a good job of doing that. But it's going to take a lot of folks to do
Melly, what we need is a sister soldier moment. Do you guys remember when, during it was this Bill Clinton was running for office, and he was running for, was it president? I don't remember what he was which race it was. And you had this militant activist come out and start endorsing violence and political violence. And she was on the left, on the far left. I think she's a Black Panther or something. And Bill Clinton got up and said, "I dissent from that. That's not me. So if you want that, go vote for that. But I dissent from that." And right now, and I have to tell you, this bothers me so much. There is so much cowardice. You don't see John Ossoff or Josh Shapiro or Rahm Emanuel or any of these people standing up and saying, actually, no, it's better to lose than to win with a Nazi tattoo, or actually, no, it's despicable to call for Medicare for all when your own wife won't even take Blue Cross Blue Shield because she needs $1,000 check before she lets a sick person through her front door. It is better to lose than to win with somebody like that, who's out there, trashing Jews day in and day out for owning the system while wearing a $10,000 watch. It's better. I rather lose than win with that. And that's how I feel about some of the Republicans. I have no problem saying that. I rather Haley Stevens win than the guy she's running against, because he's an election denier. And I rather lose with someone who's denying that, because I think that's very dangerous to our democracy. I don't see that on the who in the Democratic Party is willing to say, I'm drawing a line in the sand. If you single out and demonize Jewish Americans for their support for politicians they like and suggest that somehow this is nefarious, I don't want anything to do with you. Or, if you go out there and you say abolish ICE and we don't believe in capitalism and we hate America and we're wiping our dirty hands on the American flag, I don't want anything to do with you. I'd rather lose than win with someone who would wipe their dirty hands on the American flag. Who do you see who's willing to say that?
That's a good question. I mean, I think so many politicians are risk adverse. The idea is they're just going to be let's not talk about the topic and let's talk about the safe issues that, I know that I'm in alignment with my party and are broadly popular. I could see a Josh Shapiro doing it. I think I could see an Ossoff doing it. But with that being said, I do think you're 100% right of some of the strains that I see that worry the most about some of the folks on the DSA. Because I would say, again, not all these people are created equal. Like Brad Lander, you had him on your program.
Yeah.
You might disagree with him, but he's no wipe your hands on the flag
Right,
person, right?
But he is going to campaign with her, right? It's kind of like a downstream effect. Like at some point I was like, okay, I would never have, at this point, I would never have like a certain, let's say I would never have Tucker Carlson on my show because he's I think a massive anti-Semite, right? Then you ask the question, okay, well, what about like if somebody went on his show, would you have them on, right? Like if somebody went on and endorsed every single one of the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories he's been promulgating, like, okay, they're axed also, right? Like at some point you have to say like, yeah, Brad Lander, honestly, like obviously, like he's a liberal Zionist, he's wrong about a bunch of things, but he's not a hater, but he is normalizing and he's opened the door. There's a comment here. J Knight 5421 says, because behind each DSA member is a moderate Dem cheering them on. And I that's how I feel. And I feel very, what do you think?
I mean, I get your concern
you get
there.
It, yeah.
I was just pointing out that like I do think we have the comments of this one New York rep that is so out of so bad.
Right.
But I think you're right, and I think there's clear and easy things, even though we've agreed that the economic anxiety that a lot of the DSA folks are pointing to is real, that could be pointed out and could be excommunicated, which is the fact of like, no matter what you think about the Israel, Palestine, Gaza issue, some of the stuff they've saying about Israel and especially Jewish people is insane and anti-Semitic, and it should be called out for that. I don't understand some people's infatuation with Hassan Piker. Like, I don't get it. Call those people out. And I think we're in a moment in politics, though, where both bases are so reluctant to push a fight within their base. Like you mentioned the Bill Clinton moment, and it just seems like it was a different political era where you had these candidates who would be like, okay, I'm going to help define myself differently than the party, or try to like get the upper ground with the nation as a whole by taking someone on in my base. And I just think like the will for either party to do that is so low now.
Danman92 says, where's all the GOP politicians who condemned Trump for gloating over Rob Reiner's murder? You can play that game all day. Danman, I did. And I know a lot of others who said this is utterly inappropriate and despicable. He called Hakeem Jeffries a thug a few months ago, and I did a whole segment on my show. Why are you doing that? 25% of Black men voted for you. Why are you invoking something that would make them feel less than? By the way, a lot of my Black friends then called me and said, we don't care. Like that, like that's not racist. Like you are oversensitive, girl. You're showing your leftism, but I don't know. I don't like it. Like I have no problem condemning him. I have no problem saying I would rather lose than win with this or with that, with a person who I will not name, but who went on Joe Rogan and repeated every anti-Semitic stereotype right now, was on, just the other day. And like, I don't have a problem saying that. And I think that there are actually a lot of people who do, first of all, there's a lot of Republicans who are not very happy with Trump right now, who are sort of gumming up the works of all. This is another thing I find hilarious, like why the Democrats are so eager to take back the Senate, as if the Republicans are doing like so much with their majority. Like, they're getting nothing done. It's all executive action. But I don't know. I do feel you have seen, on my own show, I have had Republican after Republican, member of the cabinet, senator, congressperson, influencer, come out and condemn Tucker Carlson. He was the biggest influencer on the right. And then he turned on the Jews. He became blatantly anti-Semitic, and they're like, you're out. And they have no problem saying that. They have no shame saying that. Whereas, Mallory McMorrow says one negative thing about Hassan Piker and she's out. It just seems like it's not even.
Yeah, I would say I think there are two issues one issue for each party. And the issue I would say on the Democratic side is the Democrats can get a bit, and it kind of connects to their worst moments in the cancel culture peak, which is they'll establish like this is the consensus opinion. Right. And if you stray outside of the consensus opinion, you're dead meat. And it's the funny thing is a lot of times the consensus opinion isn't the consensus opinion of everyone in the party. It's just the consensus opinion of everyone on the party on Twitter. Right. And then I think on the Republican side, that's worrying, and in my opinion, more worrying just because Trump's in power right now, which is the cult of personality, right? Which is you'll have these MAGA aligned influencers who will go on and they'll be like, the Iran war is great. We're bombing them. Fire emoji, fire emoji. And then the ceasefire, like Trump will announce some sort of ceasefire and he'll be like, peace, amazing. Fire emoji, fire. Like, it's like, okay, like, what do you believe? Do you believe that we should actually be at war with them? Do you think that it's just like whatever the Trump administration announces, they're going to say is the best?
Totally.
We've seen even that backtracking with, folks who were critical of the insurrection and then we're like, actually, no, it's fine. So I think both parties have their issues. On the Democratic side, is again, it's that groupthink that if you get outside of it, you can be cast out. With Republicans, it's this, you got to do what Trump says. And it'll be interesting because we're getting to the end of, Trump, he's not going to run for another term. It'll be interesting to see kind of where the politics of the GOP goes after kind of this person who kept a lot of different people with different opinions in the coalition is no longer the leader of the party.
All right. Elizabeth says, Andy Bashir is my governor. I do like him, but not all he stands for. He will hopefully stand up to the unhinged wing of his party, but he may not. And then I will no longer like him. I think that there is a real hunger for courage, for authenticity. The Democrats seem convinced that their base will punish them if they come out and say what they really believe. And what it just leads to is like, you feel like they believe nothing. Like you take someone like Ro Khanna, this guy will say anything to anyone. He will do anything for a stunt. He will do anything to get in front of a camera. What is authentically him? It doesn't exist. He just wants power. And I feel like that is the template right now. And I was interviewing a former DSA member on my Substack, which you guys should go watch it. It was so fascinating, like the inside look. And I was like, what do they want ultimately? And he was like, they just want power. These people are not socialists. They are Leninists. They are communists. They are authoritarians. They believe in political violence. They have a lust for it, a thrill for it. It's bad. It is bad. And it's just shocking that there's no internal leadership within the Democratic Party to push back. And I do think that inauthenticity comes from the fact that their base now is not labor. It is the overeducated elites. It is wealthier Americans who are overwhelmingly Democrats. And because of that, they have this like embarrassment about who they are and what they really believe. And they feel like they can't admit it.
A lot there. I would say this, there's still evidence that like most union members, even though they went more to Trump, they're still almost evenly Democratic. And we still have a working class base. I would say there's the base of the Democratic Party that I would say is much more established online, much more established in like the commentary sector, and the staffer
level,
which is white, highly educated, kind of like progressive. I say this as I have a lot of friends who do gender studies, but kind of like this like gender studies idea of like, we got to get into every aspect of identity politics. And I do think that dictates a lot of the conversation, but a lot of the times when we get to the actual voting, and this is where I would say, if I were you, I would feel less worried about the nation as a whole, is that when we get to the voting and we go into regions where the makeup of the party is different, usually the more moderate candidate wins. We saw that again in, I mentioned 16, but also in 2020, Joe Biden, he wasn't the candidate everyone loved on Twitter. He wasn't the candidate that got everyone excited, but he won because he mopped the floor with everyone in South Carolina and then just caught fire there.
And then he gave the nation what I believe is a big gift, which is he moved the Democratic primaries to South Carolina. I think that's wonderful because that is like a cleansing, cleansing by fire. Like Black women in South Carolina are not going to vote for a socialist. So it's almost like it's going to have like a clarifying effect on the whole process, which I think will be wonderful. Mally Smith, God bless and protect you. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Come back very soon. And the rest of you come back tomorrow. I'll have somebody else on who I don't agree with to debate about one of the biggest stories of the day. If you like this conversation, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us a lot. There's a lot of content on YouTube feeding you what you already believe. Very little helping us understand our fellow Americans. God bless you all, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.